We are starting with SmackDown as a scheduled match between Cameron Grimes and Grayson Waller never got started thanks to Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso jumping Grimes in the aisleway. Paul Heyman, who accompanied the heels, tried to paint Nick Aldis as the villain in this picture, not himself or the Bloodline, as Aldis was the one who booked the four-way for the Royal Rumble. Sikoa and Uso attacking Grimes coming out of the video recap from last week's show was a nice touch that felt completely unplanned and unpredictable, a sign of a post-Kevin Dunn era. Aldis insisted the Fatal 4-Way match between AJ Styles, LA Knight, Randy Orton, and undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns goes ahead, and booked a handicap match for later that night. Aldis had a great line telling Heyman, "Disassume yourself of the notion that this is a conversation between two equals, because it's not, in a sign to the Bloodline, who is really in charge." The booked handicap match would pit Styles, Orton, and Knight against Sikoa and Uso, and if nothing else, this was a noteworthy, unpredictable start to the show. It did come at Grimes' expense, who was poised to make his first appearance in weeks, but something tells us that he'll find a way to make his presence felt. Throughout SmackDown, Paul Heyman tried to find an ally for Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa given the absence of Roman Reigns, but no one was eager to help the Bloodline. The heels took out Orton prior to the scheduled 3-on-2 handicap match, but failed to keep him out as the Viper emerged late in the contest and hit Uso with an RKO for the win. Post-match, Reigns' three challengers continued their attack and executed a triple powerbomb on Solo Sikoa through an announce table, retaliation for the attack during last week's show. Heyman's demeanor shifted to shock and anger over what transpired, with the show ending with him calling Roman Reigns, as his three challengers made a definitive statement this week. In the grand scheme of things, this story put Uso and Sikoa in a position to be scapegoats and tackling dummies who were served up to the contenders without any backup from Reigns himself. It'll be interesting to see how long it is before they stand up to Reigns and we see the cracks continue to grow within what was once the most dominant faction in WWE. This story will evolve next week with a contract signing for the Fatal 4-Way for the Royal Rumble, while US Champion Logan Paul will be the guest on the Kevin Owens show ahead of their title match. Katana Chance and Kaden Carter will defend the Women's Tag Team Championship against Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, so there will be plenty to tune in for as SmackDown heads to the Rumble. During WWE SmackDown this week, Tyler Bate and Butch were shown at a coffee house, and Bate was excited over last week's debut and had some ideas to improve their team. Butch was about to shut Bate down when he suggested some team-building activities, stating that the Brawling Brutes are in the past, a bold move by the former UK champion. Sheamus is still missing due to a shoulder injury, while Ridge Holland is in NXT and in the midst of his storyline injuring Ilya Dragunov, and with the Brutes done, will the Butch name be next to go? SmackDown also saw a very serious injury which brought a match to a swift end by the referee, and it was a match that featured former NXT champion Carmelo Hayes. In a backstage segment, Nick Aldis spoke about being impressed by Hayes in the recent US title tournament, and when Austin Theory and Grayson Waller interrupted, a match was made. In the penultimate match of the evening, Hayes took on Austin Theory, and given that the two were no strangers, they put on a great show before the match was suddenly called off. At one point, Theory went to hit Hayes with the Avalanche Spanish Fly from the top rope. When he jumped up to hit the move, he didn't get enough air. This led to Theory landing on the top of his head and neck, getting hurt, while Hayes bounced off of him, and referee Brian Tran wasted no time in calling off the match. The focus immediately went to the health and well-being of the superstars, while Grayson Waller, who was at ringside, looked very concerned for his partner. The commentary team were also worried, with officials telling fans at home that the stars were hurt and that an update would be coming on social media. In said update, WWE tweeted that both Theory and Hayes had suffered face contusions, but will both be okay, and it goes to show that accidents can happen at any time. Unfortunately, these two weren't the only names hurt last night, as Cora Jade suffered a reported injury at an NXT live event where she faced women's champion Lyra Valkyria. Fan reports state that there was a fake knee injury spot early in the match, but later on, Jade landed awkwardly on her leg, leading to a botched pin attempt by the Valkyrie. This all seemed very serious, and photos shared on Twitter showed the referee and trainer checking on Jade after the match, which could not come at a worse time for her. Jade's recent changes in appearance and her push on TV suggest a future NXT Women's title opportunity, and she only recently returned to NXT TV after a 4-month hiatus. This injury could postpone or derail plans for her, and while no update on her condition has been made known yet, we're sending her, as well as Theory and Hayes, the very best. We've got some concerning news from the NWA next, as one of their wrestlers, Black G's, was recently the victim of a shooting and attempted carjacking. G's, real name Darnell Kittrell, was in his vehicle on Thursday, January 11th around 7 p.m. when he was approached by 4 masked assailants, and during the altercation, Kittrell was shot in the hip. This caused a non-life-threatening injury, and Kittrell, a registered firearm owner, used his gun to defend himself, prompting the attackers to flee from the scene before the authorities arrived. The authorities used surveillance footage to gather leads, while Kittrell was transported to a local hospital and is currently recovering. In a statement, Billy Corgan wished his very best to the wrestler, saying, "We stand by Black G's during this challenging time and wish him a swift recovery. His strength and resilience have inspired us all, and we eagerly await his return to the NWA ring. Our thoughts are with him and his family." Kittrell recently battled cancer, specifically multiple melanoma, diagnosed in the spring of 2023, which affects plasma cells in bone marrow, so his journey has indeed been a rough one. Black G's was scheduled to make his return at the NWA Paranoia event that'll happen today in Fort Lauderdale, though of course that can't happen now. In response, Kittrell thanked those who supported him and confirmed he won't compete at NWA Paranoia, while adding that he's excited about working the next show he can. This is a scary situation, and Kittrell is lucky that the masked assailants didn't take his car or his life, and we're wishing him a speedy recovery. During this week's AEW Dynamite Homecoming, Darby Allin and Sting faced Konosuke Takeshita and Powerhouse Hobbs in a Texas Tornado match that saw the faces get the win. Their post-match segment saw Sting and Allin have a stare-down with the returning Young Bucks, but with all the attention on the Icon, fans won't have noticed that Allin was hurt. Brian Alvarez reported that Allin suffered an injury during the match, specifically when he took a bump that involved his neck hitting the ropes. The severity of the injury remains uncertain, and it's unclear whether Allin will need to take time off to recover, and fans are hoping for a speedy recovery for the dynamic AEW star. Over to SmackDown, as before this show went on the air, Gable Steveson was in action, making his second SmackDown Dark match in consecutive weeks. Just like last week, Steveson got a big victory over Cedric Alexander, and we'll have to see what's next as Steveson continues his quest to be a WWE superstar. With Gable Steveson appearing at WWE SmackDown events, there have been questions about his future in amateur wrestling, and it seems his time on the mat has come to an end. While speaking to the Star Tribune, Minnesota Golden Gophers coach Brandon Eggum said Steveson won't wrestle in 2024, his final season of eligibility, as the Olympian is now focused on his WWE run. Now, 2024 is set to be a pivotal year in the wrestling landscape, with several contracts and multiple companies set to expire, but WWE is trying to make sure their top stars go nowhere. PW Insider reports that WWE has initiated a wave of new long-term contracts for their stars, with some deals spanning an impressive 5 years. The last time WWE was willing to offer 5-year deals, it was back in 2019 and 2020, when the company wanted to make sure their stars wouldn't jump to the recently launched AEW. Names who have contracts expiring this year include Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, and Ricochet, so it's easy to see why WWE wants to keep these top names around. One name WWE is keeping an eye on is Eric, who hasn't competed since September of last year due to an injury, and Sean Ross Sapp reports that his contract is being extended due to injury time. It's unclear how long Eric's contract will be extended for, but all we know is that he's staying in WWE, which is what the company hopes is also the case for McIntyre and the other names listed. As for where these top stars go, that remains to be seen, but if WWE has their way, many superstars will be going nowhere else, at the very least until 2029. During the Day 1 Raw, Giovanni Vinci would suffer an injury during his tag team match, and that bout would be ended abruptly after the medical team checked on him. The Wrestling Observer newsletter reports that Giovanni Vinci is 100% out of action with a concussion, which took place after Kofi Kingston nailed him in the jaw with a kick on Raw. On Raw, it was said that Vinci will be sidelined for a number of weeks, and we can only hope he can recover quickly, but WWE is not going to rush any return from a concussion. In May, WWE will host its first premium live event in France with their upcoming Backlash show, and some of WWE's top names are coming to Lyon. In promotional material shared this week, Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, Rhea Ripley, Cody Rhodes, Bianca Belair, and Randy Orton are all featured for the show. WWE is also using Io Sky, Kevin Owens, Bobby Lashley, Jimmy Uso, Solo Sikoa, and Rey Mysterio to promote the pre-Backlash SmackDown, so those in France can expect a stacked 2 nights of shows. Back to SmackDown as Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, still infuriated with the beatdown they suffered at the hands of Karrion Kross and the Authors of Pain last week, dared the heels to meet them in the ring. Instead, Paul Ellering emerged from the darkness and pointed to the Titantron, where a warning from Kross aired in which he labeled his group the Final Testament. Lashley and the Profits were on guard as their newfound rivals created an ominous atmosphere in a solid follow-up that allowed the heels to take center stage without repeating last week's attack. This week it was a warning more than anything, and it is unlikely to be the last one. And on Twitter, Bobby Lashley updated his profile to reveal that his faction is called the Pride. There was a belief that this name would be unveiled on WWE SmackDown tonight, but instead, a new name for the Authors of Pain was revealed, and Lashley has since deleted the Pride from his bio. There was no mention of the new name on WWE SmackDown, and the trio were still announced as Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits as they made their way to the ring. It's unclear if WWE still wants to use the Pride name, or if they just want to hold off on revealing it this week due to Kross's group getting its own name. Until recently, Lashley's faction had been called the Almighty Prophets, and do you think this group needs a new name? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Bayley was also in action during this week's SmackDown, but the founder of Damage Control would lose after her so-called allies refused to intervene on her behalf. When Damage Control came together in 2022, Bayley was the leader and would guide Dakota Kai and Io Sky around, but in recent weeks, it looks like Bayley's lost all control of her group. That all started after Kairi Sane joined at Crown Jewel, a move that didn't seem to make Bayley happy, and shortly after Sane's fellow Kabuki warrior Asuka would join the faction. Ever since, Bayley has been kept out of the loop on their plans, and while she's helped or tried to help her stablemates, this hasn't been reciprocated. During this week's match with Bianca Belair, Bayley faked an injury, expecting that Damage Control would get involved and help her out, but that didn't happen. Surprisingly, the members refrained from doing so, and Belair ultimately secured the win with a KOD, and Bayley would have a heated argument with Dakota Kai backstage after the match. When the role model inquired about the lack of assistance, Kai explained that they didn't interfere to avoid disqualification, believing that Bayley could handle Belair on her own. Nevertheless, Kai tried to cheer Bayley up, assuring her that she had the situation under control and expressed confidence in her victory in the upcoming Rumble match. The unfolding developments within the group in the upcoming weeks will be worth watching, and despite bold New Year's predictions, it appears things are still not fine between Bayley and her girls. On next week's Raw, Jinder Mahal will challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship in a match that has very clearly gotten under the skin of Tony Khan. After Khan's outburst, Mahal would fire back with a dig at Hook, though that post has since been deleted, and what do those in WWE make of Mahal's sudden title shot? According to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select, nobody in WWE has any real problem with this match, as Jinder gets on well with the entire roster. He reports, "Everybody likes Jinder. Jinder's a well-liked dude. There is plenty of that, hey, wish they would have made sense of it type thing." As to whether this warm reception leads to a title change in a matter of days, that remains to be seen, but right now, the only notable person against this match is AEW's current president. The main event of Dynamite saw plenty of exciting spots, including Sting hitting a Scorpion Death Drop on Hobbs from the seating area through a table below. That spot nearly missed their two-table setup, while totally avoiding one table as Sting's head hit the floor in a scary spot that left Tony Schiavone very concerned. While speaking on Rock 106.1, Schiavone provided more insight into the closing segment and shared his talk with the Stinger after the match. He said, "When Sting came off the balcony, did the Scorpion Death Drop onto the table, I had gotten up from the broadcast position and walked behind. I watched it on TV because I had to go out and do an interview with him right after. I walked out and people were going crazy. I walked in the ring, I stepped in the ring, and Bryce Remsburg, the referee, says, 'Hang on a second, we're not so sure how hurt he is.' I stood there and Bryce said, 'He'll be okay.' Sting got up and looked around, and I had the microphone down, and I said, 'You're an idiot, you know that, don't you? You don't have to do this. Fans love you, you don't have to do this.' He doesn't, for his age, to do those crazy things." Sting will thankfully be okay, but perhaps both he and Darby Allin should think twice about such dangerous spots, especially as Sting needs to be injury-free for Revolution in March. Ultimately, Sting has a lot of creative freedom in AEW and is willing to do spots he wants, including the very scary moment we saw in Daly's place this week. What did you make of the spot? Should Sting not have done it, or is it up to the icon what he does on TV? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. More from SmackDown as Santos Escobar, Angel Garza, and Humberto Carrillo built momentum in their rivalry with the LWO, with Garza and Carrillo besting Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde. The match ended in controversy, with Carrillo jumping Santos Escobar from behind at ringside, and this distraction allowed Garza to get the win with a pin and using the ropes. The match was as good as you'd expect from the talent involved, and this marked Garza and Carrillo's first main roster win in 595 days, with their previous win being on a May 2022 SmackDown. Carlito could have been held off for another week, while Garza and Carrillo scored a cleanish win, and the shine that comes from it, and this finish was the only downside to this match. Nevertheless, the heels won, and Carlito will continue his feud with Santos Escobar, but with Rey Mysterio set to return soon, WWE may have little use for Carlito relatively soon. And that was this week's SmackDown, and what did you make of the show? Let us know in the comments below. Since the Day 1 Raw, the WWE Universe has been buzzing about when The Rock will next appear following his comments teasing a showdown with Roman Reigns. In December, it was reported that the Australian government were hoping to secure The Rock for the Elimination Chamber Perth show, but fans hoping to see the Great One will be disappointed. In the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it was made clear that rumors of The Rock vs. Roman Reigns Down Under aren't accurate, as Brian Alvarez writes, "Regarding the Reigns vs. Rock match, well, I presume it's WrestleMania and could be a three-way with Rhodes, but I don't think that'll come out until many weeks from now. What we did have confirmed is the Australia rumors aren't accurate. Reigns is not even scheduled for that show. He's never been advertised, and there are no plans for him for that date right now." With Reigns not appearing at Elimination Chamber Perth, there's no reason for WWE to bring The Rock to Australia, leaving many questions as to what the plan actually is. Cody Rhodes was set to finish his story with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, but it's not every day that The Rock comes back to make himself known, especially that he wants a match against Roman Reigns. We'll have to see what happens with this situation, because The Rock's return to WWE could shake up a lot of things, and while a match with Reigns could happen, it won't be at Elimination Chamber. But what do you make of this? Should it be The Rock or Rhodes who faces Reigns at WrestleMania? Give your thoughts in the comments section below. And we're ending today with Bray Wyatt, who sadly passed away in August 2023. And while he's gone, he's not forgotten, as WWE are making sure that his life is celebrated. PW Insider reports that WWE started a Bray Wyatt project in the last week, which features interviews with people who knew Bray closely, including his brother Bo Dallas. Jason Baker of Callison Studio, who is known for crafting Wyatt's Fiend mask and reportedly created the Uncle Howdy mask, has also been reached out to by WWE. As of right now, there is no confirmation on whether this project will be shown on YouTube or saved for a documentary on platforms such as Peacock or A&E. Perhaps this project will get a theatrical release, especially as Wyatt had been working on a feature film during his time away from WWE, and we can only hope this project does justice to the wrestler.